Shalom, I'm Naama Rue. This is my husband, Rabbi David Rue. And we're talking about Shmita, figuring out what is permissible and what is forbidden as we throw all our faith to God for the 7th year of the 7-year cycle during the Shmita, when we let the land rest. And there are so many specifics, and most of them have to do with a Jew growing food in the Holy Land. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So can you tell us about trees?
Well, there are lots of things to talk about trees. We're going to start with planting trees, since we've been talking about planting. And it says, Sadcha lo tizra, your field you will not seed. Does seeding include planting trees? There's a different verb in Hebrew for planting a tree. That's notea instead of zorea. So it doesn't say in the Chumash anything about notea. It does say you're not allowed to prune your vineyard, but that's not exactly the same thing.
Because grapes are their own category, because they are sacred.
They're considered a type of tree, but I'm saying pruning is different than planting.
Okay.
Now, pruning in general is a subcategory of planting, in that it's prohibited on Shabbos because you're making the plant grow better, which is a tolda of Zorea. But that doesn't necessarily, so if the tolda is prohibited on Shabbos, you would think on Shmita it would be also. So the Rash, in his commentary on trees, we've run across him before. He was one of the people who was a child, very young child, when the exile from Spain took place. He writes in his Parish on the Mishnayos, Kasuv Kərmך lo tזמור. It says in the pasuk, you will not prune your vineyard, v'kol sheken netiah, and all the more so he says you're not allowed to plant. You're not allowed to plant trees. Dehuu Ikar melacha tevei, because it is more of the principal melacha, meaning if the subset of the melacha, the prohibited work, is prohibited, obviously the primary point will be prohibited. The Toseftא in Shabbos and the Gemara in Gitin has a statement, Hanot'a b'Shabbos בשוגג יקיים, במזיד יעקור. If you accidentally plant a tree on Shabbos, you're allowed to leave it in the ground. If you did it intentionally, you have to uproot it. Ubeshvi'is bein b'shogeg bein b'mezid Ya'akor, and on Shmita, either accidentally or intentionally, you have to uproot the tree. That's as far as the Toseftã goes. The Gemara adds Dibur Reb Meir. This is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Important to keep that last piece in mind. The Rambam paskins differently than the Rash, and he says, V'ken hamavriich or hamarkiv or hanot'a, and so too, someone that does grafting of any kinds, or he plants a tree, וכיוצא בהם, מעבודת האילנות, and any other work on the trees, makinos amakas mardus מדבריהן. We give him lashes of rebellion from their words, meaning it's a rabbinic prohibition. So the Rambam is apparently learning that this is a rabbinic prohibition, not a Torah prohibition. Now, the Chazon Ish has a very interesting way of understanding the Rambam. The Chazon Ish in general has a unique way of learning. He attacks issues in different ways than the vast majority of other poskim, or other poskim before him. Since him, he's created a very large school of thought. So the Chazon Ish says, "Ve'efsar dehave b'chlal," and it's possible that Netiah is learned indirectly. Ein mazhirin min adin, and since we learned it out of the Kal V'chomer, there's a principle in the Talmud that we don't punish someone for something that's learned out of a Kal V'chomer. It's a Torah prohibition, but we can't punish you for it because it's not specifically stated. Lefichach ein lokin ala Netiah, there af al gav dehavim deraisa. So the Chazon Ish says we cannot give you lashes for this, even though it's prohibited from the Torah. Meaning from the Torah, we can't give you lashes, right? Because it's learned out of a Kal V'chomer. So he's saying, the Rambam is saying that we give you lashes in a rabbinic nature for this, because the rabbis didn't want you to do what is a Torah prohibition.
Can I just ask you, what do they mean by lashes? What do they mean?
They take someone and they put them up and they take a whip and they give them 39 lashes.
That's what they're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's Torah lashes. Rabbinic lashes are until you agree not to do it anymore. It could be much more.
Oh.
In any case, the Minchas Chinuch disagrees with the Chazon Ish. The vast majority of the Achronim disagree with the Chazon Ish. If you look on notes on YouTube, you'll see a list of them. The Minchas Chinuch says, "L'chora tamua me'ashas to גיטין daf yud gimel." Apparently, it's a question to us from the Gemara in גיטין. Nati'a aser min haTorah, that we learn there that planting is prohibited from the Torah. That planting trees, I should say. It's one verb in Hebrew. It's two different verbs in Hebrew. Chin, look there. V'gabe hanotע בשביעית michtei hu deraisa v'haderaisa. It comes out that it's planting a tree on Shmita is deraisa either way. That's why you have to uproot it. Ach in ze tamia kol kach. But in fact, this isn't such a problem. Deish lomer de'ashasham azil leman domer netiah deraisa v'halacha eino ken. The Gemara there is going according to Rabbi Meir's opinion. But the halacha does not follow Rabbi Meir. So therefore, even though Rabbi Meir's opinion is that planting a tree on Shmita is a deraisa prohibition, nonetheless, we don't paskin like Rabbi Meir. So the Rambam, understanding we don't paskin like Rabbi Meir, of course, doesn't paskin like Rabbi Meir. Very good. Rav Kook has a different way of learning this. And he says, "B'ma shehiksha al divrei harambam she'aser notea hu midurabanan." There is to ask a question on the Rambam that the basic prohibition of planting on Shabbos is rabbinic, but in the Gemara from Gitin, it certainly appears that it's not that way. Kavar herosi she'ikar achiluk b'zroa linatoa. He says there's an intrinsic difference between planting seeds and planting trees. Who davka but notea yichur, and this is notea really is planting a little tree. There's a word for that I can't remember right now. A sapling. Shu chiluk b'tzuraso mizriya. This looks entirely different than planting a seed. Shazorim zeraim v'tavua, from seeding seeds for grains. Aval im hu note ilan al yedei zrias garin. But if I would plant a tree through taking a seed, a tree seed, an acorn, for instance, and putting it in the ground, even though the Chachamim call both methods of planting a tree netiah, that's because this causes a tree to grow either way. Mikol makom, none in any circumstance, however, havia beklal zeriya. When I plant an acorn, it's in fact zeriya, planting a seed, and not netiah. Ubelash in the Rambam, because in the Rambam, as he writes it, he's talking primarily about vegetables that are planted by seeds and so on, right? Or in a vegetable patch, and they grow this way. And so therefore he prohibits all manners of planting a seed. However, when he's talking about planting a sapling, v'sholtim osa derech shtila b'pizur hazriya harishona hi mi'atorah v'yashniya b'derabanan. And so he says, the first one, where you're planting a seed, this is a Torah prohibition, and the second one, of planting a sapling, is a rabbinic prohibition. So he's actually said both the Rash and the Rambam are correct, and looked at it in different ways. So we have three different ways of learning the Rambam. The first one is to say the Rambam is saying that lashes, the Chazon Ish's way, is saying the lashes are rabbinic, but the prohibition is a Torah prohibition. The Minchas Chinuch and Rav Kook say it's a rabbinic prohibition, And there's no the Minchas Chinuch says there's no question from the Gemara in Gitin, because the Gemara in Gitin is talking about is Rebbe Meir's opinion, which we do not paskin by. And Rav Kook says there's a difference between planting a seed and planting a sapling. Planting a seed is a Torah prohibition, and that's what the Rash is talking about in the commentary Mishnah. And planting a sapling is a rabbinic prohibition, and that's what the Rambam is talking about.
So where does that leave us?
It really, practically, it doesn't matter so much, because it's either a Torah prohibition or it's a rabbinic prohibition.
So you cannot plant a sapling or a seed, even if it's not a food-producing tree.
Right.
During the Shmita year.
That's correct. The difference would be if I have an orchard and the trees have died and we have to plant something. If it's a rabbinic prohibition, then I might be able to have a goy do it, or if I combined having a non-Jew do it along with selling the land, that would be a way of dealing with it. That's
because you have an income, and next year you need trees, so you want
it would be a
transplant some trees there, right?
Right. I mean, I don't believe there's any fruit tree that actually gives fruit in less than 5 years, but I would be delaying my income by a year, and so there would be reasons to allow something that would be a rabbinic prohibition where there might not be a reason to allow it for a Torah prohibition. So the fact that most of the Achronim say this is a rabbinic prohibition allows us to be lenient in certain circumstances.
Okay. Good thing I planted that elderberry tree last year.
That was a long time before Shmita.
Okay, thank you.